I am Sophia, on the verge of turning 27 this year, and I've enjoyed 5 years of marital bliss. Recently, my son Jasper marked his 4th birthday, a joyous occasion. Initially, I worked full-time after tying the knot, but now I balance part-time work at the same company. My husband, Carter, is 30 years old, 3 years my senior. Our journey from dating to marriage was initiated by Carter's passionate advances, but post-marriage, I observed the shift in his demeanor towards a more domineering side. Carter has a 20-year-old sister named Daisy, and their age gap seems to contribute to a somewhat indulgent relationship on Carter's part. Before marriage, I didn't mind Daisy's frequent visits and assumed they got along well. However, after tying the knot, I started noticing changes in her behavior. Daisy often drops by unannounced at any time and expects to be served without ever bringing a token of appreciation. Rather than addressing the situation, Carter expects me to accommodate her demands. Daisy acts as though I'm invisible, addressing only Carter with a casual, "Brother, I'm here again," despite not preparing for an additional guest. I end up serving dinner to Daisy and Carter instead of understanding, blaming me aloud, insisting I should have been more considerate. Despite Daisy's verbal apologies, it's evident she relishes Carter's preferential treatment. Left with leftovers, I prepare my own meal while Carter and Daisy continue their chat on the sofa, leaving the dining table messy. They never acknowledge Jasper or me, treating us more like hired help than family. One evening, as I'm about to take a bath with Jasper, Carter interrupts loudly, instructing me to buy a cake for Daisy despite it being late. Daisy insists on having it immediately, and Carter blames me for delaying. Feeling compelled, I reluctantly head to the cake shop with Jasper, until overhearing their conversation, I learn they're criticizing me for being inconsiderate and questioning the decision to marry me. Meanwhile, Jasper, though unable to grasp the words, senses tension in our relationship. Suppressing my emotions, I ask him about his cake preference, and he cheerfully requests one with lots of fruits. Our trip to the cake shop is filled with discussions about cakes, momentarily pushing aside Carter's early words. Jasper and I arrive just before closing time, fortunately finding the cake Daisy desired. We purchase 2 cakes, including the fruit-loaded one Jasper wanted. Back home, I serve the cakes to Daisy and Carter, then prepare Jasper's cake and head to the dining room. The moment I place it in front of Jasper, Daisy points and expresses her desire for that cake. Before I could react, Carter moves Jasper's chosen cake in front of Daisy, disregarding Jasper's protests. Carter justifies his action, claiming he bought the cake with his earnings and had the right to choose for Jasper. Unable to contain my emotions any longer, I voice my dissatisfaction in response. Carter threatens with divorce. Jasper, who had stopped crying, anxiously holds my hand and then, after some thought, says, "Mom and I also love cake with strawberries on it." "Yes, it's really delicious." He mentioned this while eating a cake initially wanted by Daisy. Feeling that Jasper was enduring too much, I lifted his cake plate when I saw Daisy reaching for it. I took Jasper to the next room so he could enjoy his cake in peace. Carter apologized to Daisy, claiming he was sorry for being stingy. Despite wanting to retort, I held back for Jasper's sake. Watching Jasper innocently enjoy his cake was a heartwarming sight. After finishing the cake, we decided to have a late bath and sleep in Jasper's bed. The next morning, I discovered Daisy had already left as I prepared breakfast. I heard Jasper crying shockingly. His piggy bank, a gift from my father, was broken, and the saved money was gone. Jasper, who always said good night to the piggy bank, was left heartbroken. When I questioned Carter about it, he casually mentioned that Daisy needed some money, so she took it from the piggy bank. Holding a crying and shaking Jasper, I felt his pain so acutely that I cried with him. It was painful to witness Carter prioritizing and caring for his sister more than our son. Expressing my anger and sadness, I confronted Carter, breaking my usual silence on arguments in front of Jasper. Carter, without a word, went to the bedroom and returned with something shocking in hand: divorce papers. I discovered the hidden divorce papers that Carter had tucked away somewhere I didn't know. In a sudden burst, he confronted me, shoving the papers at me before storming out of the house with a loud bang. Jasper, who had never cried over the issues with Carter and Daisy, seemed to have reached his limit, crying since last night. Unable to bear seeing Jasper so hurt, I suggested skipping daycare for the day, and he happily agreed with a loud yes, showing a faint smile. We spent the day playing and bonding with Jasper, bringing a picture book from the shelf, sitting on my lap, and happily remarking, "The teacher at the nursery today was Mama, right? He looks like an angel." His little heart seemed filled with patience, and I decided to make the day special by taking a day off from work. Despite causing potential trouble at my workplace, they kindly understood the situation and granted me a day off. In the morning, we visited the park, played hide and seek, and had fun in the sandbox and on the slide. When we returned home for lunch, Jasper appeared sleepy, usually napping by himself. But today, he fell asleep on my lap like when he was a baby. Though I initially thought of doing household chores during his nap, I decided that today was special instead. I allowed myself to be healed by his peaceful sleeping face and gentle breathing. However, my serene moment was abruptly interrupted by a noise from the entrance, indicating the front door had opened. As it wasn't Carter's usual time to come home, I became suspicious. I quickly hid in the bedroom closet, clutching Jasper. A voice echoed through the house, and to my surprise, it was Daisy, trembling with fear. I listened as she searched for something, expressing frustration over not finding it. Daisy then made a phone call, mentioning Carter and discussing their unsuccessful search. After hearing her lock the front door and leave, I put Jasper to bed and contemplated the strange events. I couldn't comprehend why Daisy had entered the house and what they were looking for. Suddenly, Carter seemed like a stranger, and I felt a mix of disgust and fear towards him. Swiftly packing essentials for Jasper and myself, we headed to the station and took a train to my parents' house. Fortunately, their home was nearby, just 2 stations away. Although I hadn't contacted them beforehand, my parents sensed something from my expression and welcomed us without asking questions. I shared the entire ordeal with them, including my fear of staying at our house due to Carter and Daisy's actions. Upon hearing my mother's suggestion that Daisy might have been looking for my belongings, possibly cash cards, I recalled my past experience as a successful CEO in the handmade goods industry. I had entrusted the company to friends when I decided to prioritize raising my child after getting married. Although I still worked part-time and communicated with the company from home, Carter was unaware that I was still the CEO. I discovered the hidden divorce papers that Carter had tucked away, suspecting that he thought I had a decent amount of savings. While I've mentioned to him that I still receive some assistance from the company, I've deliberately kept the details about being the CEO and my savings private. This secrecy stems from realizing early in our marriage that Carter struggles with managing money and tends to spend everything he earns. Carter, at first, provided only $2,000 a month for food expenses and even suggested I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. However, with the financial strain of raising Jasper and only $200 for food, I never agreed to be a full-time housewife. Eventually, he reluctantly allowed me to work part-time, and to ensure I wouldn't consider divorce, he had me sign a post-marital property waiver through a lawyer. Since Jasper's birth, I used my savings for his nursery fees and clothes. As I've only received $200 for food, I've never asked Carter for additional funds beyond the food budget, leading him to believe I have savings. Considering Daisy's apparent need for money and Carter's perception of my financial situation, they might be searching for my cash cards. I have a separate savings account dedicated to Jasper, with a portion of my salary directly deposited into it each month. Despite their search, they won't find the cash cards as I always carry my valuables. However, there's still an unsettling issue. Daisy might be entering our house even when we're not there, and Carter may be allowing it, following my father's advice. I decided to store my valuables, including the cash cards, in my parents' safe as I pondered their need for money. Jasper approached my father crying over his broken piggy bank and the shattered promise of saving up. My father, angered by Jasper's story, vowed to call Carter. My mother suggested finding out their purpose calmly, as Carter's mention of divorce might shift blame to us, making the divorce more favorable for him. To ascertain their purpose, I decided to record their conversation. Consulting a lawyer who was a friend of my father's, upon returning home, I began cooking dinner, keeping my phone screen down to record secretly. Carter arrived home, surprising me by immediately asking about my cash cards. When I questioned him, he gave vague answers, attempting to deceive me. When I remained silent, Carter grew agitated and demanded all my part-time money for his sister. Refusing, I explained it was for Jasper's savings. In response, he angrily pushed the signed divorce papers toward me, declaring that I was living off his money and didn't need to save for Jasper. He even uttered words implying he valued Daisy more than our son. Hearing this, I stopped preparing the meal, put the divorce papers in my bag, took Jasper's hand, and headed for the door. Carter, in a loud voice, declared his serious intent for divorce, instructing me never to come back. I responded by stating I wouldn't return to a house where a stranger could come and go freely. After leaving, I received numerous messages and calls from Carter, which I ignored, turning off my phone. I sought refuge at my parents' house, sharing the recording and divorce papers with them. Although I confessed to having no love or affection for Carter, I expressed concern for Jasper. My parents advised me to do as I pleased. Acknowledging the potential emotional impact on Jasper if a divorce were to occur, while grappling with the decision to divorce Carter, Jasper expressed his hunger. My mother, seeing my distress, kindly made hamburgers, his favorite dish. Overwhelmed with emotions, tears welled up in my eyes as my mother told Jasper with a warm smile that she prepared the hamburgers so that he and I could visit whenever we wanted. Taking a bite, Jasper exclaimed with joy, praising Grand's hamburgers and expressing a desire to eat them every day. I responded, saying it's because the hamburger contains the love I have for him, and he, in a touching gesture, took a big bite and offered it to me. Moved by Jasper's kindness, my tears couldn't be held back, and even though I tried to stop them, they persisted. My father, noticing Jasper's concern, reassured him that my tears were of happiness, not sadness. Hearing this, Jasper, in a moment of understanding, hugged me, and my father's eyes turned bright red, realizing the blessing of being with family. I remarked to Jasper that family is precious. Surprised, he questioned if Dad had mentioned that only Daisy was family. My father gently confirmed it but then asked Jasper if he wanted to live with them as a family. With a laugh, Jasper happily agreed, making everyone smile naturally. Despite contemplating divorce, the meal felt so happy that I finally decided to part ways with Carter. I planned to inform Jasper about it, and even though discussing it weighed heavily on my heart, Jasper seemed to grasp the situation. Happily, he expressed the desire to live as a family, embracing the pet dog and calling him his younger brother despite the dog being older. Preparations for the divorce began, starting with contacting a lawyer who was a friend of my father. The next day, we formalized the contract, and my father and Jasper shared comforting laughter while I lay in bed, reminiscing about my childhood. The following day, upon checking my smartphone, I found over 200 calls and messages from Carter, showcasing his emotional instability. Exhausted, I turned off my phone, and with the lawyer's assistance, we explained the situation to my parents. Daisy had accumulated significant debt from a casino and shopping addiction, and Carter acted as her guarantor, planning to use my savings. The lawyer confirmed that the divorce papers had already been submitted, and Carter sobbed upon realizing it was finalized. Despite expecting disagreements about child support, he signed a pledge to pay $340 to Jasper every month. In a subsequent call from Carter, his tone lacked aggression, and he calmly admitted to financial manipulation, explaining his complex feelings toward Daisy. I firmly asserted my decision not to reconsider and heard his faint sobbing before he wished me happiness and hung up. Remaining strong until the end, I discussed future plans with my parents and decided to stay with them until Jasper grows up. I resumed my role as a company president and later learned that Carter and Daisy had informed their parents about the divorce and debt, resulting in disownment. Today, I find happiness being with my family.